Well, welcome to another episode of Connections and Conversations. I'm delighted to be here with my friend Scott today. We have a few things that we're going to talk about, but first, I'd like Scott to just introduce himself too.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Burdette. I live in Seattle, Washington for the majority of my adult life. I was born and raised in a small, actually outside of a small town named Vernon, Texas, very rural. My dad was a plumber, my mom was a telephone operator. They were both my dad was a World War II vet. I was born late in life to them. I was an accident, so my sisters were 17 and 20 years older than me. And my oldest sister, it's her birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday, Cindy, if you see this. Um, I had a political family uh, from the outset. It was always important that, we had a voice in the outcome of our government. And I think that was very prevalent among, that generation that fought in World War II.
Absolutely.
And then my oldest sister, Cindy, was very politically active in civil rights and broader marginalized group rights. Her first boyfriend turned out to be gay and remained one of her closest friends for life. Um, she taught special ed, and she was very, very much about women getting equal protection and treatment and pay. So she really lit the progressive fire in me at a remarkably young age. Um,
That's awesome. So, now we know how you were kind of brought into politics. I know that, kind of coming from that family standpoint of advocacy. And you were a young Dem, right? I remember you talking about that.
yes, actually, again, Cindy, my sister, um, uh, there was one of she started out in special ed. She ended up being a dean at a college, and one of the people she worked with, her daughter, Jenny Hintermeyer, if I can say her name on here. Anyway, she invited me to a Young Democrats, teen convention thing that I ended up going to a few times, and it was really great. I mean, my sister lived in another city at that point, several hours away from the farm, and but when I was there, I would go to these young Dem uh, get-togethers, and they were great.
Yeah, so you got bitten early by the political bug. And I know that in part of that political journey that you participated in ACT UP. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so when I came of age, it was in the midst of the AIDS epidemic, and it was a real crisis. And it shifted my political view because I saw one specific party that was not just ignoring, but celebrating this illness. Quote unquote, God taking care of the gay problem. And there were not funds going to any meaningful research. Um, it was really ugly. And meanwhile, I was I had um, put myself in a very safe position from my sexual practices from a place of fear and pragmatism because we didn't know things about it. Meanwhile, my mentors and my elders were dying right and left, and there was nothing to be done for it. And it was very interesting that women uh, and lesbians and came in to create these gay hospice situations or these AIDS hospice situations, and I just had to do something, and the ballot box was insufficient, uh, and so I joined ACT UP. A friend Victor introduced me to it, and he later died, and I participated in very extreme marches and protests and did die-ins, and the police were very violent and would arrest us, just drag us away.
But you were still determined and you just continued with your advocacy in some other areas too. And you and I participate in online audio conversations quite frequently. I really, really enjoy them because you are a creative person by training, and you also have some background in psychology. And I know one night we were talking, and I'm not exactly sure how we got into it, but it just sparked the idea for us to kind of, share that kind of message and understanding with people in a broader way. But, during these political seasons, people talk about messaging and those types of things. And something interesting that you brought up, which is psychology kind of term and concept, something that you're very well aware of, that you use in your work because you're a designer, okay? And we were talking about, of course, political messaging, but you brought up something called, I think it was sensation and perception. Am I right?
Yep.
Hmm. Talk
Psychology
about that a little bit.
perception. So well, I got my bachelor's in psychology, and the goal was to get the PhD. I was headed down that path. Started working in real estate investment trust world, and then ended up doing design and creating model homes and so on and so forth. And so my work progressed, and my school fell to the wayside because you start losing credits after a certain amount of time. And that is still my career to this day. But one of the most fascinating topics for me in my psychological studies, and something, as a lifelong learner that I've continued to really investigate, um, is sensation and perception and how it applies to, in my work, um, you know, well, I guess let's go to a definitional standpoint. Sensation is kind of a bottom up psychological process. It's what data are we being fed? What are we sensing from our environment, whether that be touch, smell, sight, the basics? They are not active things. We're being flooded with sensation at all times. Then perception is, how does our brain make sense of that? How does our brain analyze the sensation as being dangerous, helpful, categorize it? And how does that turn into emotion? So all of these things together, they informed the way I started designing spaces, knowing the way certain symmetries or visual blocking would make people, they would sense that in a space, and it would make them perceive it as welcoming and make them feel comfortable. So that same, that's a very rudimentary
Right.
definition. But that same technique has been used to great effect for a very long time by advertisers, by product placement, by all of these things. And uh, and more nefariously, it's been used politically, going all the way back to when you look at old cartoons they would have in newspapers, that would have like the villain that they were trying to portray, because these news media outlets were, just like today, owned by very, very wealthy people with an agenda. And, by simply putting, angry, exaggerated features and big eyes, and it was heavily used in racist propaganda.
Hmm.
Um, it was, people were sensing an image. They were sensing this and that and the other. They were perceiving these images of these bugged eyes and, you know, glaring teeth and so on and so forth as being nefarious. That's what it made them feel. And we see that in so many ways today when you have, I mean, there are some really amusing but informative examples. Like they've taken things like, the introduction to Different Strokes, that TV series, and all they did was change the music into minor notes and violins playing in discordant ways. And it's the exact same footage, but you feel like something really, really bad is about to happen. And that's an example of what is done. That's so if you ever get a chance to look up disturbing strokes on YouTube, you'll see what I mean.
Yes, that was so interesting. You shared that with me because I think that's kind of universally, a jingle to a show that people know and get, and it kind of does something to you. It jolts you when you see this same image, but it has this kind of different music. And I think kind of the way that we got into this topic and your understanding of it was we were talking about the various places that we get our news and listen to. And I think I talked about how sometimes just the tone of people's voice, the way like I feel it, and it is agitating to me. So I just kind of don't like to listen to it for too long. And I tend to be a NPR and PBS kind of news listener. Those are kind of some of my major sources, and part of that is because the environment in which the tone of delivery, not just the announcers, but the speed and all of those things, the way it goes along, it's I don't want to say calming because they're reporting the facts and sometimes those things are very disturbing, but I don't feel I feel like I'm allowed to feel that myself, and it's not um kind of initiated by the way it's delivered to me or other things.
Right. And that's a major distinction there is that so sensation, of course, that's the basic input. If it is even tempered, if it is delivered without a great deal of variation in tonality, because with sensation, the more variation there is in data input to our brains, the more our perception starts extrapolating. And absent actual information, given, for example, if you see an advertisement, a political targeted ad, and it's in slow motion and kind of grainy, and they've got a low single hum, duh, over it. It's common footage that was seen everywhere with some dark voiceover. It gives all these different data inputs to our mind, and our perception creates something else.
I
And
see.
going to that filling in the blanks, our perception, our need to see patterns, because ultimately that's what humans, we have survived by learning to recognize patterns in the season, and lots of things, behaviors. So
Yeah. So a little dive into psychology. I love it, but it plays into many aspects of our lives. So I really appreciated you kind of sharing your knowledge on that. But then I also learned something else about you. You're just, like I said, you're kind of this renaissance man because you also do gardening. I attend one of your weekly gardening pods and defer to you or ask you questions about things related to gardening because I grew up with farmers and my mom, grandmother, great gardeners. So I'm drawn to that as well. And I love that you are, sharing that knowledge with people in a wider way and bringing people in. So thank you for doing that. And
it's
be-
therapeutic.
it really is. And we need all of these types of things that we can get, I feel like, at this time. And even though it was just kind of a let them eat cake kind of thing, I don't know. I mean, these tariffs and all these things, people may need to look for other ways to, source some food and that kind of thing. So,
Absolutely.
but the other thing that I found interesting that I know you have been working in for a very, very long time is a kind of a community driven event. And I love those things that focus around building community, sustaining community, and that is Burning Man. So I, I, I think most people probably have heard about it. Can you tell us a little bit about what Burning Man is, how you got involved, what you do?
So Burning Man it is a temporary city in a very inhospitable place. It was founded by Larry Harvey back on Baker Beach, uh, but ended up progressing to the Black Rock Desert as it grew and grew. And it has a series of principles: radical self-reliance, communal effort, leave no trace is very important. They call, uh, you leave the desert as you found it. And gifting is one of the major principles that I personally find very appealing because it pulls us out of a, we are in this commercial driven, we're so steeped in it that we don't even realize how immediate the notion, the desire, the impulse is for a quid pro quo exchange. So the principle of gifting, learning to give something without having that impulse that you're going to get something back, that it is a singular act. And then on the other side, it is hard to learn to receive a gift without that impulse that you need to give something back. No, that it really is, I think, very valuable. It's shifted my perspective on the way that I engage the world and the way that I see things, and it really brought capitalism into stark view for me.
Yeah, because like I said, once you told me how involved you are in it, like the planning of it and these types of things, I was like, well, let me find out a little bit more about what he does. And at its root, it is about community. It's about, as you said, self reliance, but it's all about kind of caring for one another, for the earth, for the place that you are. I loved it. And I said, so I guess I'm going to get to learn more about this now that I know Scott. So tell me a little bit about maybe what goes into the planning, because you have like an annual, is it a summit, an event? What do you call it? And
Well, it depends on at what level you participate, because participation is also one of the principles. There are no spectators.
okay.
Everybody participates in one way or another. Um, and we participate historically. We have a significant, what they call a theme camp, where our gift that we bring is through, we have clothes making workshops where we provide all the fabric and tools, and uh, we host a big Latin dance event with great DJs and amazing dancers. Um, but it all started from with me from I had just lost my mother and gone through a series of losses that were in rapid succession, and my partner, I got back from my mother's funeral, and the next day he threw me in the car and said, "We're going to Burning Man." And he had tickets, and I'm like, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I didn't know much. And we were ill prepared. We almost died.
Well, I'm glad you didn't.
I'm glad I didn't too. But the one of the principles is communal effort. And we got through it thanks to a lot of that. But then we were committed we were so moved by it and what we experienced that we helped found the nonprofit arts collective Conception. Um, and so we ended up being a fairly significant presence there. And we have fundraisers year round. And the way it, like, basically, you start planning for if you're doing a theme camp, you get back in September and you have your first meeting for the next year in October. Because communal effort is something when you're surviving out there like it's camping on Mars in the year 3000. So,
That's interesting because, when I hear you talking about these things, the work that I do is really the mission around it is about increasing civic engagement. And it is about getting everyone up and participating. So I see it's a lot of parallels there, and there can be many ways that people are brought into engagement. So,
yes, I mean, and that's another one of the principles is radical self-expression is that we each bring a distinction, our own distinct gift to the event, to the equation. Radically express that. Allow yourself to explore really who you are and share that with those around you. And then one principle that is very important to me that I think we all miss, and I think it's critical right now for our mental health in these times in which we live, is immediacy, and that is really acknowledging the moment you're in, being not thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow, not worrying about what you said in the past, but being present with who you are, where you are, not worrying about getting to the next thing or whatever. You
living in the moment.
really, truly immediate. And I think that is psychologically healthy, and I'm trying very hard to practice that these days.
Well, I think we all need to practice that. So thank you for, just kind of encouraging it and finding ways to help others do that. And we're going to start to, wind down here. But before we do, I would just kind of like to ask you to share some closing thoughts, insights about, community civic engagement. It can be about any of the things that you do or just your thoughts in general, because I value your voice, your insight, and I would love for you to share them with our community.
I mean, I guess one of the big things would be that each of you, each of us, is more powerful and more capable than we realize. We have a tendency to underestimate ourselves, and we are, especially in the current climate, they want us to feel small and disempowered. But there's a wealth of information out there. There are helpers. There are uh, organizations, and you are powerful. You are capable. You're important. You're vital. Every single one of you uh, have something to contribute, and it is our greater aggregate power is really, really, really not to be underestimated. So don't feel don't feel like there's no wind in your sails. Hopefully, I've given a little puff right now.
Ah, you absolutely have. And I love that. And like I said, I love the work that you do because it is community based. And I think that's going to be the key and the secret to us overcoming this moment and staying in community with one another, bringing our unique selves and our gifts to that community and expressing them very loudly and freely, because I fear that, where we're headed, our voices are being silenced, and I think that is a very dangerous place for us to be. So I want to kind of, I no, I want to thank you for being here with me today, sharing that message, sharing what you do, because I feel like sometimes people don't know what they can do, and hearing about what others are doing. And sometimes I think people don't see what they do as really civic engagement. And I'm just trying to show people all the various ways that, what civic engagement can look like. And it doesn't always have to be directly connected with politics per se. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's an all ships rise situation. Um, so
absolutely.